So I'm François Le Goff. I'm doing the Euclid product management, and this morning the agenda will be covered by my colleagues as well. So Mark Roberts will present the scope of Euclid 6.2 and the most important fixes and improvements included in this new version. Then I will come back to go through some compatibility items or elements between Euclid versions to tell you more about how to exchange data between Euclid versions. And I will also have some slides to cover the installation and the update mechanism to upgrade your existing Euclid installations to the latest version of Euclid 6. After that, my colleague Alexis will present the fee calculator, which has been released together with this new Euclid version. And Tommy Hag will give you an update on the IUCLID Cloud services and the Euclid Cloud. And as I said previously, we will finish the webinar with a question and answer session, but feel free to send your questions while we are presenting the different topics of today's webinar. So the next agenda point is the information on Euclid 6.2, and I'll give the floor to my colleague, Mark Roberts.
Thank you, Francois. Hello everyone, yes, my name is Mark Roberts. I support the development of Euclid 6. Today I'll be introducing to you some of the format changes in this latest version of Euclid, as well as a few improvements. As Francois said, afterwards my colleague Alexis will present the fee calculator, and Francois will introduce to you the compatibility between the different versions of Euclid. So, moving on. The latest version of Euclid reflects the updates to the OECD test guidelines, as well as the EU-CLP regulation, as well as a globally harmonized system for classification and labeling, and the updates to the online dossiers for REACH. As part of this update to the OECD test guidelines, the OHTs for the pesticide residue chemistry OHTs have been updated. And in line with this, there are 3 new OHTs, as you can see listed there. Also, the 7 existing pesticide OHTs have been updated in line with the OECD test guidelines. These include various updates to, for instance, the product type options. All these updates are included in the new OHTs for the pesticides too. For your information, there's been a merger of one particular OHT, metabolism of residues in crops and in rotational crops. Previously in 130 of Euclid, this was 85.3a and 85.3b, but now these have been merged to 85.3. In this merger, the duplicate fields have been removed, and there's new endpoint options available to address the residues in crops and rotational crops respectively. So moving on, under section 13, these contain assessment reports, as you probably know. The assessment report section we notice has been increasingly used to cover specific needs of the chemical safety report. So in line with this, we now have a dedicated section 13.1 for the CSR, which includes all the various elements which you need to include for this section, including Part A, which documents a summary and declaration of risk management measures. Also in section 13.2, this is now solely used for other assessment reports, and to help you with this, we've added a couple of new report types to this section: measured exposure data report and uses advised against assessment report. So moving on, in version 130 of Euclid, we introduced a new submission type, exchange of experimental data. In this latest version of Euclid, you can now create a dossier for this submission type. Just to remind you that for this submission type, this is outside of any particular regulatory context, so it's not regulatory specific. When you create a dossier for this submission type, the legal entity will automatically be included, and we'd also recommend you to actually state which regulatory program the data was originally generated for. So moving on to the next item, you'll notice in the latest version of Euclid a difference in the user interface. We have now split the Euclid flags, so there's one flag for confidentiality claims and another flag for regulatory programs. As you can see here in the screenshot, this is showing the confidentiality claim. And in this screenshot here, this is the flag for the regulatory program. As an important note to this, we've tried to improve the Euclid flags by actually specifying which element of the document the flag is being set for. So for instance, here in the screenshot, you can see 3 different types of Euclid flags. So one we have that's applicable to the field, one's applicable to the section, and one's applicable to the entire document. So moving on, for the dissemination preview, which helps you to see what information which is in your dossier is likely to be made public by ECHA. We now have the possibility to export and save the dissemination preview as a CSV file. The report can then be opened in Microsoft Excel and can then be further refined, for instance, by sorting or filtering the report as you so wish. We also have introduced a new print option for Euclid. So this allows you, when you're, for instance, printing a record or a data set, to actually decide whether you want to show or not to show the confidential fields in Euclid. You can see the confidential fields by the icon, which you can see in front of you there, the dark triangle with the exclamation mark in the middle. This option is also available when you're printing other entities like reference substances, literature references, legal entities, etc. So there's some additional points of data entry and configuration which I'd like to highlight. First of all, in legal entity, you'll find an extended legal entity identifier pick list. Also, for the legal entity sites, you can now actually choose multiple legal entities to link to that site. You can see there in the screenshot I've highlighted where you can do that. So under materials and methods, which is a header you'll find in all endpoint study records in Euclid, for an existing field called specific details on test material used for the study, we've now extended this text template, and we've extended it to include type of biocide or pesticide formulation if applicable. Also, we've actually created a new field below this with the same name, but is a confidential field. So that's new, and also we've extended the conditional formatting in the test guideline repeatable list, which you can see highlighted at the bottom there. This means that if you select no guideline in the qualifier pick list, all the fields underneath will be disabled. This now includes version and remarks. Before, this was not disabled. So some more additional points of data entry. In section 2.1 GHS, there's a new field called type of classification. You can now distinguish between self-classification and harmonized classification using this pick list. The harmonized classification is for normally for substances of highest concern. And there's also some new dynamic content too. So if you select the not classified checkbox, this will disable all the hazard categories and hazard statements under the classification header. And vice versa. If you actually start putting information in the hazard category or hazard statement fields under classification, this will in turn disable the not classified checkbox. So also for section 2.1, under additional labeling requirements, previously in Euclid this was a very IUCLD specific field. Now we've broadened it and made it not regulatory specific. It's now additional non-GHS hazard statement. Also, under classification for the physical hazard classification, flammable gases and chemical unstable gases, we've extended the hazard category pick list to include pyrophoric gases, and we've also added some more information to the H phrases in the hazard statement. A few other points of importance for you to note. In the 2 endpoint summaries for 521 and 522 for biodegradation in water, we've now added a new field called type of water. This now helps you differentiate between the type of water used in the study. So marine, fresh water, or you can choose an other and specify your own. In all endpoint study records, we've also added a new text template to the field justification for type of information. This is called read across category. This is to help you to provide a summary for the justification for your category approach and to address any endpoint specific elements not covered by the justification. We've also added a new confidentiality claim under surface treatment in section 1.2 composition. So you'll find that there in the latest version of Euclid. Also for the literature references entity, we've now changed a few labels. So before testing laboratory was used, and now we use testing facility. Company owner has been changed to study sponsor, and company study number has been changed to study number. And also for your notes, you can also now export literature references, as you can see in the screenshot there. So yes, these are all the format changes I'd like to highlight for you today. You can find these thoroughly documented on the Euclid website by going to the address before you. If you open in the screenshot there the documentation, you will see this. This will provide you all the different release notes for each legislation. You'll also find the entire Excel, an Excel which contains all the fields of Euclid, including all the pick lists and phrases, as well as all the Word documents for each legislation. I would like just to highlight before I leave, I'd like to highlight for you the chemical safety report. This is now compatible with the latest version of Euclid 6.2. This now includes a new Annex 3 mode of action annex. It also includes a new section for additional toxicological effects in CSR chapters 5, and also includes readability improvements. We've removed some unnecessary labels, etc., to try and condense the report to something more manageable. We've also introduced some new reports via the report generator. For instance, the literature references report, which you see there. This lists for you all the literature references either derived from a substance or a mixture product. Here's a list of the other reports you can find in the report generator now. This includes, as I said, the literature references, but also a list of attachments for substances and mixture products, as well as a BPR confidentiality report, and as before, the summary of product characteristics report, which you generate as an XML and you import into SPC editor. So I'd like to pass the floor to Francois, my colleague, who will present to you the compatibility of the Euclid versions.
Thank you, Mark, and hello again. So in this section, I will cover some compatibility questions between Euclid versions, and I wanted to start with a special note for rich users. So this webinar takes place on the same day as the publication of Euclid 6 on the 15th of November. And if you go on the Euclid website, you can now already download the new version, the updater or the installer for the desktop or server versions. And this new version brings fixes and improvements. Mark went through some highlights of this new release. So, although it contains improvement and it is recommended to install the new version to benefit from these improvements, it still does not mean that it's mandatory for preparing registrations, for example, for the 2018 deadline that we have next year in Europe. So the version that we have now is fully compatible with previous versions. So you can use any Euclid 6 versions published in the past in order to submit information to ECHA IT systems. And in order to prove that as well, I can tell you that we upgraded already our systems to the new version of Euclid around 10 days ago. So we are already receiving dossiers that are processed with the new versions of Euclid. So we have made this version compatible with previous versions as well. It means also that this version does not change anything in the completeness check that we are doing in ECHA. So a dossier that was complete before will still be complete with the new version, and there is no variations or changes in the way we assess the completeness of the registration dossiers submitted under REACH. You will see later in the presentation that we also included an improvement in this new version that allows the exchange of data between all Euclid 6 versions, and I will explain how this is done in the new version. To come back to the validation assistant, although we have not changed the way it's functioning and the results of the completeness it is assessing, we have made some modification first so that the rules are still working with the new format. So So Mark went through the changes that were done to section 13, for example. So the validation assistant implemented in Euclid 6.2 takes care of these changes in the format to give you the same results as before. So if a CSR, for example, is required for your registration, then it will check in the correct section. If you are using the new version of Euclid, and it will check the old section if you are still using the previous version of Euclid 6. The validation assistant has also received some improvements. So for example, we have implemented new quality rules, which are giving you some additional information on the quality of your dossiers. So some indication on what potentially could be enhanced in the dossier you have prepared. It's indicated here that the hazard endpoints for which new quality rules have been implemented are mainly in the human health section of Euclid. We have also improved completeness check rules, not to change the outcome it gives, but to give more feedback on how to fix the errors. And we have also added a new validation scenario. So for those who are using this new submission type that was introduced by Mark, exchange of experimental data outside of any regulatory context, they can still use some of the rules we have implemented for registration to make sure that the information provided in the study summaries is complete. And of course, you will see the full details of the changes we made to the validation assistant and also in general to the full Euclid 6 application in the release notes published on the Euclid website. I was saying previously that we have implemented a way to increase the compatibility between Euclid versions, and as before, we ensure the forward migration. So it means that any Euclid document, Euclid files you have generated with Euclid 5.6 or Euclid 6 will be able to be read by the new version of Euclid 6, version 2.0. But in addition to that, we had a new objective with this Euclid 6.2 version. It was to be able to export Euclid 6 files from this new version that could be loaded to the previous Euclid 6 version, so 6.1, that was released initially in April 2016. So this is what we call the backward migration, and in order to have a better idea of what it means, you can see on the left of your screen the situation before this feature was implemented in 6.2. So in green you see in which way you can exchange data, so from Euclid 6.1 to Euclid 6.2, and you could also exchange in both directions between Euclid 6.1 versions. So a dossier created with Euclid 6.1.3, for example, was compatible with Euclid 6.1 that was released in April 2016. But you can see on the left side that there was no way to export data from Euclid 6.2 back to Euclid 6.1, and this is what has been included in this new release of Euclid. And the addition here is represented with this orange arrow going to the left. So from Euclid 6.2, you can now export a file that will be compatible with Euclid 6.1. So it gives a way for everybody to continue exchanging Euclid 6 data, whatever version is being used. So how to use this export function? It's available in the export assistant. So when you select a dossier or a dataset in Euclid and you right-click export, you have this export assistant where you select the location of on your computer where your file will be saved. And you see at the bottom of the screen of this export assistant that you have a new option to export to the previous major version, which means that you will export a file that will be compatible with Euclid 6.1. If you know that the recipient of the information has Euclid 6.1 still, then use this option. Otherwise, don't use this option and just export the file in the Euclid 6.2 format. For ECAS submission, ECAS system is already 6.2 compatible, so you don't need to export to the previous major version. You just export normally without ticking this option, and send the Euclid 6.2 format to ECA. Just more information about what happens with when you export in the previous format, because as Mark was presenting earlier, we have introduced new fields and new documents in Euclid 6.2 that obviously do not exist in the previous version. So we have implemented the backward migration in a way that when it's not possible to migrate correctly the fields, the information to the place it was before, we always find a solution to transfer this information to another field. So in the pick list, you can select other and add some complementary information. So if there is this possibility, we use it. Otherwise, we would migrate the information back to a remark field or to a generic text field like remarks or summary. And in the case where there is no possibility at all to migrate this data back to the previous Euclid 6 version, we record all the information that cannot be migrated as an attachment to the Euclid dataset or dossier. So what this means is that this backward migration allows to transfer all the data. So there is no data loss, but there is a data structure loss. So the structure in which the data was in the new format cannot be kept in all cases when migrating back to the previous format. Which means as well that when you import this information back to a Euclid 6.2 format, the structure cannot be recovered because we cannot analyze the content of the attachment or the content of all the fields that were migrated. So the data is still there, but will not be in the fully structured as it was in the original Euclid 6.2 database. So that's why we recommend to use this backward export function only when you know that the recipient of your file is still using Euclid 6.1. And to finish this section of the webinar about Euclid compatibility, there is here a note to Chesar users. You will soon be informed that Chesar 3.3, the new version of Chesar, has been released today, published today on the Chesar website. You can download it now. And our recommendation is to upgrade both systems at the same time. So if you intend to upgrade Chesar to version 3.3, then you should update Euclid to version 6.2 as well. And if you intend to upgrade to Euclid 6.2 and you are a Chesar user, then we invite you also we recommend that you install the latest version of Chesar to ensure that the systems are fully compatible with each other. So they were meant to function together, Euclid 6.2 and Chesar 3.3, and they are both available today on the Euclid and Chesar websites. I will continue with some information on installation and update. It's always we receive always some questions about the installation procedure or the update procedure when we release a new version of Euclid. So the installation, so if you don't have Euclid yet, then the installation procedure has not changed. You just have to choose whether you want to install a desktop version, so on your computer only, or whether you want to use a server version that will be accessible to multiple users in your company. At the end of this webinar, we will have also a presentation from Tommy Hag. So the third option also is to subscribe to the cloud services that ECA is offering on the web for SMEs. So that was for the installation part. So the process is the same. You download the installer or the installation package, and you follow the steps of the installer assistant. There is also for the desktop version of Euclid 6 a video tutorial that goes through the steps of the installation, so you can watch what is going to happen when before installing Euclid 6 on your computer. For the server version, there is also some installation instructions that should be carefully read before installing the server version, because there are some configurations that should be made in order to successfully install the server version of Euclid. So concerning the update, we have different processes, and it depends from where you start, what is your starting point. And I will go through the slides quite quickly because we have not a lot of cases of users who still have Euclid 4 data or the new chemical database that was used for new chemicals before REACH. But still, if you are in that case, we have some documentation on how to migrate from Euclid 4 or the new chemicals database. Then you can still have Euclid 5.0 to 5.5, and for this there is a specific update process. But it's more likely that you will have already Euclid 5.6 or Euclid 6 installed, and for this we have also an update process that is much easier. So just in case you have still Euclid 4 or the new chemicals database, then we invite you to connect to a page on the Euclid 6 website, which is called Archive Euclid 5, and there you have the description of the process to follow in order to migrate successfully your information to Euclid 6. And you have also the possibility to download all the tools needed to do this migration. So basically in that case, you need to download Euclid 5.1, which is available here, and it's a portable version. So you don't need to have to do any installation. You just download the Euclid 5.1 files and you save it on your computer, you run it, and it will start automatically, and you can proceed with the migration process. In case you have Euclid 5.0 to 5.5, then our recommendation is to go on this same page of the Euclid website, Archive Euclid 5, and download and run the Euclid 5.6 portable version. It's also a portable version, so it means that you just download it, save it on your computer, and it's ready to run. So you don't need to install anything. You just run Euclid 5.6. And here our recommendation is to import all your data to Euclid 5.6 and then follow the process how to update from Euclid 5.6, which I will present just after that. So from Euclid 5.6, we have two different procedures, whether you have a desktop version on your computer only, and in that case you are invited to download the Euclid 6.2 installer and run it, and the installer will help you go through the migration of your data from Euclid 5.6 to Euclid 6.2. If you have a server version, then our proposal is to export all your data from Euclid 5.6 and then install a new version of Euclid 6.2 and import all the data in this newly deployed version. If this proposal is not suitable in your case, you can always contact the AKI help desk to give receive some other support and to have other migration or upgrade procedures proposed to you. But this is our recommended option because it's the simplest approach to export all your data and then to import in a newly installed Euclid 6.2 instance. Then the most frequent case will be the update from a previous version of Euclid 6. And in that case, you can go on the Euclid 6 website download page and download and run the Euclid 6 updater. So now we have only one updater that covers desktop and server versions for Windows and Linux. Okay, that's one updater, and we have also one upgrader for Mac OS users. But you download this updater and you run it, and it will guide you through the steps of the upgrade to the latest version of Euclid 6. And this is what the updater looks like. The first step, so when you run it, it will ask you to indicate where your Euclid 6 database is installed by selecting the installation folder. And you will have the two options. So the first option is to update, and the second option is to restore in the unlikely event that the update would fail. But you just have to select the installation folder and select update and go through the steps. This is the user interface version of this updater, but the users of the server version could also run the same tool using command lines options. Once you have indicated to the updater which installation of Euclid should be updated, then you select a folder in which you will save a backup of your current installation. So the updater forces you to take a backup of your installation before it is upgraded, just in case there is a problem. Then you can go back to the state of your database before the upgrade. We recommend not to save this backup in your Euclid 6 installation folder, because if there is a problem, then the backup could be corrupted as well. So save it in another location on your computer so that you can retrieve it in case of need. The following step is just a verification from your side. The updater is able to recognize automatically the database connection settings, but they are automatically recognized, so you can just proceed to the next step in case you want to upgrade to the latest version of Euclid 6. And there is also an option there in case you still have your old Euclid 5 database. I don't know if you remember, but in the past we released the database patch tool. So now it is integrated with the updater. So just in the case you would have your old Euclid 5 database and you would not have run this database patch tool that was provided independently in the past, then this updater provides you with this option. But otherwise you can just continue without providing the Euclid 5 database connection details. Finally, you have a summary of the actions that will be taken in order to upgrade your system to the latest version of Euclid 6. And you can press next to proceed with the installation and the migration that will happen at the same time. We have released yesterday, so it's available already on YouTube, a video tutorial that illustrates how to use this updater. So before you update to 6.2, you can have also a look at this video tutorial. It takes only 4 minutes to see beforehand what are the steps needed for updating successfully to Euclid 6.2. It's available on the ECA YouTube channel under Euclid 6 tutorials. So to summarize and to finish, these are the different processes of updating from a previous version of Euclid to the latest version of Euclid. And it really depends on your starting point. So you see that the process is much easier if you start from a more recent version of Euclid 6. And you can find all this information on the Euclid website, either on the download page or on the Euclid 5 archive pages. And this presentation is also available already on the Euclid website, so you can refer to it if you want to collect more information before preparing to upgrade to the new version. The next topic is the fee calculator, and for this I give the floor to my colleague Alexis.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Alexis Quintana Sainz. I work mainly with ReachAT, but I also have been involved in the field calculator. So today I'm very happy to announce that we are reintroducing the field calculator. You might wonder what, for those that never used the field calculator in the previous version of Euclid, the one that was available before June last year. So the fee calculator allows the registrants to estimate the fee to be paid for their REACH dossiers, and this can be done before the dossier is submitted in ReachAT. So the fee calculator is based on your company size, on the tonnage band, and on the confidentiality claims included in the Euclid dossier. And we always recommend the use of the calculator before you submit the dossier in ReachAT, mainly to make sure that you are registering in the right tonnage band, and also that you haven't claimed unwanted confidentiality claims. We have a case that they receive a €500,000 fee because they have claimed a lot of confidentiality claims in the study summaries, in the study records. There are two ways of launching the fee calculator. The first one is to launch it from the plugins menu. For that, you just click on the fee calculator icon and you are being taken to another page where you will be able to link, you will be able to choose the dossier for which you want to run the calculator. The other option is to go to the dossier view. There you right click, you choose the calculate fee option, and then you will start the wizard where you will need to indicate certain information. The first thing you will have to do is to select the company size. So we recommend, we advise that you choose the company size, the one that is indicated in Rich IT. And I would like to take the opportunity to say that when indicating your company size in Rich IT, you should make sure that you do it according to the Commission recommendation that appears on the screen here. There is also SME pages in ECA in case you want to know how to choose correctly your company size. The fee calculator might need some input from you. So in that case, some indicators will appear. This will happen, for example, if you claim confidential the UPAC name or the safety data sheet. So in that case, you might need to indicate if the substance is hazardous or if the substance is PBT or VPBB, and also if safety data sheet is required for the substance. I would like to mention that these indicators will only appear if there are relevance for calculating the fee. So if you haven't claimed confidential the safety data sheet, you will not need to indicate the safety data, anything in the safety data sheet indicator, because it will not appear. For member dossiers, it's most likely that these indicators will appear. The reason is because you are not provided in the member dossier information of the classification and labeling, and most of the times for creating the fee, it's very important that you have that information, that the dossier has that information. Also, for calculating the fees of dossiers with the tonnage band 1 to 10 tons per year, if you claim fee waiver, then you will need to indicate whether the substance fulfills the Annex 3 criteria or not. In this next slide, we are showing how the indicators look like. So the hazardous substance indicator, the safety data sheet indicator, and the Annex 3 criteria indicator. We are explaining in the indicators, for example, when a safety data sheet is required. So you don't need to know this. You just read carefully the message and then you tick there or not according to the information of your dossier or the information of the lead dossier. The same thing happens for the Annex 3 criteria indicator. We explain there what it means to fulfill the Annex 3 criteria. So don't worry, you don't need to know it by heart. If you are calculating the fee of dossier updates, you have to indicate the tonnage band of the previous paid submission. And also you have to indicate by ticking in the box if you paid for the on-site or for the transported intermediate use in the past. At the end, you will receive the result window. In there, you would be able to see that the fees calculated according to the information that appears in your dossier, and also according to the information that you provided in the indicators. So the table has a description of the fee being charged and also the amount of each fee. In case you're being charged for confidentiality claims, it will appear the section of the dossier where the confidentiality has been claimed. So for example, if you claim a fee in a specific study record that you were not planning to do it, then it will tell you which part of your dossier you have to go and where you can remove the confidentiality claim. At the bottom of the table, you will see the total amount of the fees. And basically that's all for the fee calculator. Well, remember that the fees calculated by the fee calculator are only estimates, and that the real invoice will be issued by Reach IT once you submit it to ECA. So thank you very much. And now I think it's Tommy taking the floor.
Good afternoon from my side as well. My name is Tom Muheg and I work here in ECA as the IUCLID Cloud product manager. I want to give you a quick update on the IUCLID Cloud in relation to the IUCLID 6.2 release. First, a quick update about the IUCLID Cloud. So we have a service called IUCLID Cloud for SMEs that we released in the end of July, where we offer IUCLID to SMEs as a full service, where ECA host maintains and takes care of the backups of data in the cloud. This is in the same way when we're offering it in the cloud, we're providing a new innovative web user interface, and it allows easy access to users to IUCLID from anywhere at any time. What we chose to do, because we're aiming at the Reach 2018 deadline and SMEs, we haven't introduced all the IUCLID functionalities yet, so we tailored them mainly to the needs for Reach 2018. Now, if there are SME users who are at these situations are pondering should they do an update of IUCLID or should they move to the cloud, that's their choice. But SME users who would like to move to the cloud instead of updating their local installed IUCLID can do so by exporting all of their data from their current IUCLID and export it into a newly subscribed cloud installation. As Francois explained already before, if you're in a situation that you have your data in an older version of IUCLID, so prior to IUCLID 5.6, you would have to go through the process of first migrating it into IUCLID version 5.6, but after that it can be imported into the cloud. We also have the trial service still available for everyone to test and get familiar with the IUCLID Cloud environment. Now, IUCLID 6 in the cloud. As we always stated, users of the IUCLID Cloud do not have to take any actions when it comes to migration of data or updating of software. ECA will take care of that for you, so we will migrate and update your data. In the IUCLID Cloud, we will introduce the new version of IUCLID on Monday evening on the 20th of November. That means that every subscription that comes in after that will automatically run version 6.2 of IUCLID in the background, but it will still be completely transparent to users. Existing subscriptions will have to go through a migration process. This will be run at night, and it will only lock your system for a couple of minutes during the migration, so you most probably will not even be accessing it, or it will not interrupt your work. Our current plan is that the IUCLID Cloud trial will be migrated, ready for you to be used on the 21st in the morning, and that the Cloud for SME service would be migrated by the 22nd in the morning. If you are using the IUCLID Cloud and you are in a situation where you would need to exchange data with a previous version of IUCLID, we did not have the time to build this functionality into the cloud. So in the situation that you need to do that, we recommend you to launch the IUCLID client from the cloud and follow the instructions that Francois just gave you on how to export a dossier in the previous format. With the release of the new Reach IT on the 7th of November, we have also now in the cloud a possibility to submit the dossiers prepared in the cloud directly in Reach IT without exporting and importing them again. So cloud users can, from the submission wizard of Reach IT, instead of drag and drop the file or upload the file from their own machine, can select the dossier directly from the cloud. And this makes it more transparent in the way that it's moving the data over. A quick marketing for what we're building in the cloud at the moment. Later on this year, potentially in early January, we're going to release a new feature, which we are calling dossier support to prepare your registration for the REACH 2018 deadline. So we're going to build a system where we support the dossier creation by dividing it up into smaller tasks, and we want to accompany it with the helps taken out from the dossier submission manuals. So if you think about it, your task is to prepare a 1 to 10 ton registration dossiers. So you have to go through preparation of substance identity, you have to go through defining your uses. So we have taken this out into smaller tasks so that it's more streamlined and more easy for you to keep a track of how you're preparing your dossier. And we're making these tasks for the 8 submission types that are relevant for the REACH 2018 deadline. Every task would then have a subsection to explain even further on what data needs to put in, and it will allow you to keep track on your progress. That was the update of the cloud, and that concludes the presentations for this webinar. We will now take the next 5 minutes to look at the answers the questions you've been sending so far. We will prepare the answers and we will make a summary out of them. So please continue to send your questions and we will start answering them in 5 minutes. Thank you.
We are still continuing to answer, and we have selected some of the most frequently asked questions, and I will go through them now. But if you have other questions, you can continue to send them to us until 1:15, and afterwards we will publish all the questions and answers on the Euclid website. So we have some questions about the installation and update. First of all, the first one: will the tool be able to the export assistant, will it be able to export in all the Euclid 6 versions? So yes, if you use the export to the previous version of Euclid 6, it will work with any Euclid 6 version, so 6.1. We never released 6.0, so since April 2016, when the first version of Euclid 6 was published, it was already version 1.0, 6.1.0. So when you use this backward export, yes, this file will be able to be imported in any Euclid 6 installation, even the 6.2. Do we have any plan to propose a server version for Mac? So we have no plan for that, but maybe there is a way to use the current server version and install it on a Mac server. For this, we encourage you to contact the help desk so that we can check what would be the procedure to that and see if it will be working. There was a question concerning the migration, where we propose in some cases to export all your data before importing it back into a Euclid 6.2 installation. And in that case, it might be easier to use the bulk export functionality of Euclid. So when you use Euclid 5 or Euclid 6, you can select bulk export and export all your datasets, all your dossiers, all your mixtures, all your templates and categories. And when you have that on your computer, you can just import these files in bulk in a more recent Euclid 6 database. There was a question concerning also the manual validation checks that are done by ECHA, and whether they will be different depending on which version of Euclid you use. So for the manual validation, what is important to know is that this is done in ECHA systems, and ECHA systems now is based on Euclid 6.2. So the manual validation checks are based on the new system, and all the dossiers are treated in the same way. And there will be no difference whether you have prepared your dossier in a previous Euclid 6 version or the new one. There is a question concerning the loss of data structure between Euclid versions and whether this will cause validation failures. For example, if you exchange your dossier with someone who has Euclid 6.1 and this person sends the data to ECHA, we can already say that the backward migration has been done in a way that there will be no impact on the validation of the dossiers. So we have made sure that all the things that are checked by the validation assistant are working in the same way, whether you use Euclid 6.2 or whether you export in the previous version of the software as well. But one thing I would like to add, there is no need for you to export in the previous version if you intend to submit the dossier directly to ECHA. ECHA is ready to accept 6.2 files, so just export normally if you want to send your data to ECHA. There was a question concerning the CSR, the assessment report section 13 of Euclid, concerning the migration of this information to the correct sections that have been implemented in Euclid 6.2 and presented by my colleague Mark. You have seen that now we have split this section 13 in two, so one section for the chemical safety report and the other section for all other assessment reports. And we have implemented the migration in a way that it recognizes the type of report you have inserted, so it places the document in the correct place after the migration. So in 6.2, your CSR will be under the chemical safety report section, and the other assessment reports will stay in the other assessment report section. Another question on exchanging data between Euclid versions, and what will happen if, for example, you are exchanging data with a client or another company, and you don't know if they have updated their system or not. Okay, so if you have no possibility to know this information, you can always you can do two things: export normally, and then if they import the file, they will have a failure. The import will fail, indicating that this version is not compatible with the file that you try to import. Otherwise, you can also export using in the previous format, just to prevent this from happening, and then there will be no issue when exchanging the data. Might be, for example, the solution you adopt in case you are a lead registrant and you are exchanging datasets with other companies. It might be difficult for you to know if a company has updated to the latest version of Euclid. So in that case, you could export by default to the previous version to avoid any problem. There is a question concerning the availability of Euclid Cloud. So now it's about Euclid Cloud, the availability for non-SME companies. So currently, the cloud services are targeted to SMEs, and it will not change before the deadline. But after the registration deadline, we will reassess this and decide what we will do in the future, whether we can only support SMEs in the future as well, or whether there is a possibility to extend the service to large companies or all the users. Another question on the cloud concerning the public API. So if you want to integrate Euclid with another system, can you do it with the cloud instance by using the public API? So it's not possible at the moment because we use a specific authentication mechanism, but we will investigate that for the future and provide some information in case you want to integrate a system with a cloud instance. So please do not hesitate to send your questions or requests to the ECHA help desk so that we can have an idea of how many persons or users will be interested with using the public API in a cloud instance. There was another question concerning the availability of a search plugin for Euclid in order to search in any fields of the database. So currently there is only the basic search capabilities provided in Euclid, but we have been working on an advanced search tool that allows searching for anything in the Euclid application, including attachment. And this tool is used first internally in ECHA, but we intend to start a beta testing phase with this tool in the coming weeks. And there will be more information about this on the Euclid website or in the LinkedIn group. So if you have not subscribed to the Euclid LinkedIn group, you can subscribe now, and you will get this kind of information when we start the beta testing of the search tool. It's going to be a separate tool, so a separate application that will communicate with Euclid and integrate with Euclid. And at least for the beta testing, it will work only with Oracle databases. So if you don't have an Oracle database, you won't be able to participate in this beta testing phase. That was the last question. I'm just checking whether there would be other questions here. So there might be another question in 1 second. So in case you have any other questions, you can continue to submit them to us. No, there should be. Don't see it. Therefore. Sorry, I don't see it yet. But anyway, we'll provide you with a written version of the answers, or, okay, my colleague is bringing the question to me. Which one? Okay, so there was a question whether there would be some support for REACH 2018 registrations in the Euclid 6 version for large companies. So it's not something that we intend to provide in the standard Euclid versions, but there will be this is something we are working on in the cloud. So if you access the cloud, which is for SMEs, you will have some additional support on how to prepare registration for the deadline next year. Our assumption was that for existing users of Euclid, then the knowledge was already there on how to prepare dossiers, and we didn't need to invest in an additional support module. But for the first-time users, which are SMEs, then there is this cloud option. And then, as presented by Tommy, we will have some additional support modules for them in the cloud in January next year. Okay, and Tommy is indicating that although the cloud services for SMEs are only for SMEs, you can always use the trial service if you want to have an idea of how this module is working. So it might be used as a training environment for you to learn more how to create Euclid dossiers, and then continue to work in the standard Euclid application. If you need more information about Euclid, we have published recently a series of video tutorials available on the YouTube channel. It's covering different topics like Euclid installation, Euclid update, as I mentioned already, how to run the validation assistant. And there is also a series of videos for the IUCLID Cloud. So you can watch these videos if you have any questions on how these tools are working. It's a good start. I'm referring also to the LinkedIn group. It's a platform to exchange information and discuss any information on Euclid. So the type of questions you are sending now could be also shared on the LinkedIn group. If you believe that other users have the same questions, then why not opening a thread in the LinkedIn group and ask not only Eka, because we are monitoring this LinkedIn group, but other Euclid users to share their experience and possibly answer the questions as well. And it's a good source of input for us also to plan the future development of the Euclid tool. Thanks a lot for your participation. I will now close the meeting, the webinar. As I said, you will see the recording soon on the Euclid 6 website. And we are going to be here with my colleagues answering your questions still in WebEx until 1:15. So thanks again for your participation, and see you next time.